to Beijing live and speak to the Chancellor himself. Chancellor, forgive me if we talk first of all about these visa restrictions being lifted. The reason I'm doing so is that I suppose in a way you're giving a message out there that Britain is open to all, certainly in terms of trade, and it tends to jar with what we're getting through on the poll that we have run. Explain your stance to me.
Well, there's a big difference, Eamon, between people coming on holiday, a Chinese tourist who comes and spends money in a British hotel and British restaurants and visits tourist attractions and the like and shops and then goes back to China, or a Chinese business person who comes to Britain and does a deal that creates lots of jobs in Britain and then goes back to China, and immigration. I think they're very different things. Immigration is people who come permanently to live in Britain. We're absolutely clear as a government that we need to get immigration down, and immigration has fallen by a third in the short period that we've been in office. One of the things that Britain has to do is not rely on immigration for its economic success. We need to go and make our own way in the world, and that's what this trip to China is all about. Yeah,
no, you're right there. You're doing very hard work, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. But I'm looking at, for instance, the front page of the Daily Mail today, which says slash benefits for European migrants. And this call comes from Boris Johnson, amongst other people, and it shows that in the past few years, the number of EU migrants without a job, living in Britain, living off benefits, has risen to more than 600,000, the equivalent of a city the size of Glasgow. So my point is, you're out there and you're drumming up jobs, you're drumming up investment for Britain. What, to keep all these people in a job, to give them a job and say, yeah, come from other parts of Europe and we'll go out and do the hard work and get you the job?
Well, no, I don't accept that. Look, we inherited a situation from the Labour government where they had signed away all these treaties which allowed these new countries to join the European Union just to, for people to come to Britain. There were no controls on the borders. We have got a grip on that situation, and David Cameron, Theresa May and the whole government have imposed limits on immigration, brought immigration down by a third, got a real control now. But of course, this country's got to create jobs in its own right, and that's why we need to trade with the rest of the world and get investment from the rest of the world. I've on this trip to China just arranged for 16,000 jobs to be created in Manchester through a big investment from a Chinese company. I think that is the better direction for Britain. That's what our economic plan is about. Britain turning a corner, fixing its own economic problems, making things that the rest of the world wants to buy. And by the way, fixing its welfare system so that the long-term unemployed don't just have a life on benefits with nothing expected in return, but they are expected to work, or they're expected to get the training they need to get them back into work. So I think, you know, our economic plan and our immigration plan, from the sounds of it, is very much in accord with what Sky viewers are telling you.
So you will be able to leave China with contracts signed, commitments given, and jobs in the bag?
Yeah, absolutely. Jobs in the bag, because we'll get Chinese investment in Britain, and above all, we'll also be making sure that the things that Britain is good at making, aircraft wings and aero engines and cars like Jaguar Land Rover and pharmaceuticals and the luxury brands, and indeed television and film. For example, Downton Abbey is watched by 160 million people in China, which is more than double the number of people who live in the whole of the UK. All those things are made by British people and British workforces, and that's great. And that's all about Britain earning its way in the world, turning a corner after all the problems we've been through over recent years, because we've got a clear economic plan that says Britain is going to make things that the rest of the world wants to buy.
I've been listening to your messages and what you've had to say, and without a doubt you couldn't have been more accommodating to the Chinese. Do you worry that you come across maybe a bit too desperate to please, and do they know it?
No, I think this is a relationship between two great nations, very, very ancient civilizations with long and proud histories. and we're doing business together. We're taking the next big step together, Britain and China, to create jobs and investment in China for the Chinese people and jobs and investment in Britain as well. And it's a relationship of equals, because we're both people who want to shape the future of the world and the future of the world economy. We're both nations who want to do that. And so I think there's a lot of mutual respect.
Yeah. And what about China? Preconceptions that people may have of China. In previous years, certainly, China may have meant high volume, high turnover, low quality. Even, the Downton figures that you were quoting there. Many people that we know living in China, they watch it, well, shall we say, not legitimately, via state stations and that sort of thing. What about the China of today? What would you say about that?
Well, one of my things I'm trying to do this week is change British perceptions about China in some of the ways that you're describing. I think there's a view sometimes that China is a big sweatshop on the banks of the Pearl River, just turning out cheap manufactured goods. But actually, the China of today has some of the world's largest internet companies, does some of the most advanced high-tech engineering, develops some of the world's leading medicines. I don't know if you can see it behind me, but I'm standing on the top of an incredibly futuristic building, built, by the way, to the designs of a British architectural practice, right in the middle of Beijing. But this is about the future of China. China has changed dramatically, even in the last few years. And I think if we in Britain don't understand that, if we don't appreciate that, then we will miss out. And I want us to be part of China's success. I don't see China as a threat to us. I see it as a great opportunity, because there are many millions of people who we can sell British goods and services to.
And you're happy the way the week is going so far, Chancellor?
Yeah, it's been a good. I mean, it only just started yesterday, but I've got my formal talks with the Chinese government tonight and tomorrow morning. And then I'm traveling to two of these enormous cities in China that are so much bigger than many of the cities we have in the UK. I'm going to Shenzhen and Guangzhou to see some of this future China, some of this China that is part of the modern world economy, and of course to see how British companies are making the best of it. And that's what's so exciting. The British are really successful here. And also the Chinese look at the UK and they see a country that's getting its act together, and they want to invest in the UK. So from both our countries' points of view, that's a win-win.